The Caribbean's history of piracy wasn't born out of random acts of rebellion. It was the deliberate byproduct of European colonial rivalries. By the late 16th and early 17th centuries, the region had become a battleground for imperial powers like Spain, England, France, and the Netherlands. These nations were racing to extract as much wealth as possible from the New World. But gold and silver weren't just flowing back to Europe on Spanish galleons, they were also attracting thieves and opportunists. Here is the twist. Some of those thieves were not always acting against the crown. Early piracy in the Caribbean was often sanctioned. Yes, England, for example, used piracy as a weapon against Spain, its longtime rival. Privateers, essentially state-approved pirates, were issued letters of marque that authorized them to attack enemy ships and colonies. It was piracy with a legal stamp of approval. Figures like Sir Francis Drake, an English privateer, were celebrated as heroes in their homelands while being branded as criminals by their enemies. These sanctioned raiders disrupted Spanish trade routes and weakened Spain's dominance in the Caribbean. However, when peace treaties were signed between European powers, many privateers found themselves out of work. With no crown to legitimize their actions, they turned to full-blown piracy. By the late 1600 years, the Caribbean became a hotbed for pirate activity. Islands like Tortuga and Port Royal in Jamaica became pirate havens, offering lawless zones where these seafarers could trade stolen goods, repair their ships, and revel in their ill-gotten gains. And among these figures rose Edward Teach, or as history knows him, Blackbeard. Blackbeard represented the peak of piracy's golden age, embodying everything that made the era both terrifying and fascinating. Standing at over 6 feet tall, with a wild beard, he cultivated an image of fear and unpredictability. He wasn't just a pirate. He was a master manipulator who used his appearance and reputation to control enemies before they even thought about resisting. Blackbeard's flagship, Queen Anne's Revenge, was a powerhouse. Originally a French slave ship, he captured and outfitted it with 40 guns, making it one of the most formidable vessels in the region. His exploits ranged from blockading ports to plundering ships along the Atlantic coast. And while he could be ruthless, Blackbeard also relied heavily on psychological warfare, knowing the legend of Blackbeard could often win battles without the need for cannon fire. But even the most infamous pirates meet their end. Blackbeard was hunted down in 1718 near Ocracoke Island by British naval forces. After a brutal battle, he was killed, suffering over 25 wounds before finally succumbing. His head was severed and displayed as proof of his death, but his legend lived on, inspiring countless stories and myths. The impact of piracy on the world then and now is profound. During the golden age of piracy, these outlaws disrupted colonial economies and weakened the monopoly of European powers over the New World. They also introduced new ideas about governance. On pirate ships, captains were often elected and loot was shared among the crew, principles that, while crude, contrasted sharply with the rigid hierarchies of the time. Today, piracy's influence lingers in popular culture, from theme parks to blockbuster films like Pirates of the Caribbean. But while Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow may make us laugh, the real pirates of the Caribbean were a mix of ruthless criminals, daring adventurers, and tools of geopolitical schemes. So yes, some of the world's most feared criminals were initially sponsored by nations like England, proving that, in history, the line between hero and villain often depends on who is telling the story. And perhaps that is why their legacy endures a messy mix of chaos, freedom, and a whole lot of treasure. If you enjoyed exploring the true tales behind Caribbean piracy, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's wildest chapters.